It is finally time for version 14 of our infamous tier list, ranking every single card in Clash Royale after the balance update. And what better way than jumping into it with the newest rework card in Clash Royale, the Barbarian Hut. Remember, this is a card that on my previous tier list, I dedicated the entire lowest tier to the Barbarian Hut because it was so weak, it deserved a tier of its own. Well, with that rework, surprisingly, the Barbarian Hut has skyrocketed in value all the way up to B+ tier. It is now a decently viable card in Clash Royale, and it's currently sitting at a 58 ranking on Royale API with a 4% usage and a 50% win rate. Remember, previously, for many years, it was all the way at the lowest card in the entire game. That is very impressive for one small rework. Moving on here to the Archer Queen. Now, I have created a dedicated tier just for champions because honestly, all the champions are very busted. With the 3-card cycle and the champion abilities, they are all very powerful, and it just was not fair ranking the champions versus other cards. So speaking of archers, the regular archers going all the way down here to the C tier. Unfortunately, just not a very strong card once you get past mid ladder and low ladder in Clash Royale. The arrows all the way up here at honestly A-, A+ for a very viable card. Let's go Baby Dragon as well. A+ tier. It has pretty high health, a decent damage attack and splash damage, and it ignores half the units in the game because it's flying, making it a very resilient splash attacker. The Balloon, way over here at the higher end of B+ tier. The Bandit. This is a card that I honestly believe is flying under the radar a little bit for being a powerful card. All the way up here at the higher end of A+ tier. The Barbarian Barrel. Still one of the strongest spells in the entire game, despite the nerf that he got a couple of balances ago. And speaking of barbarians, we have the good old pack of 5 barbarians all the way over here at the B+ tier. The Bats, however, with top S tier. Yes, they do have very low health, but honestly, for only 2 elixir, they deal devastating damage, offer decent distraction, and if your opponent doesn't have an immediate response, they can destroy their target in a matter of seconds. Moving on to the Battle Healer, all the way here at the low end of C tier. Fairly weak card in Clash Royale. The Battle Ram, way up here at the B+ tier. Overall, fairly decent win condition. The Bomb Tower, B+ tier. But Bomber, over here, B+ tier as well. Here's the thing with the Bomber. It's only 2 elixir. It requires at least an arrows in terms of a spell to destroy it, guaranteeing you a positive 1 elixir trade, and it has a decent damage attack. Now, speaking of decent damage, the Bowler, way over here on the A- tier. Overall, very effective splash damage, really good health, and decent range as well. Now, the Cannon previously on my tier list used to be way up here at S tier, but because of the recent nerf that it got in this balance update, it has fallen all the way down to the low end of B tier or the high end of C tier. Like, check this out right now. It only has a 44% win rate. This is a card that previously, one balance ago, was dominating the meta. Now, speaking of cannons, the Cannon card, one of my favorite cards in the entire game, and honestly, a very powerful card as well. I believe that the Cannon card is flying under the radar as a very underappreciated card. Now, speaking of cards in Clash Royale, we have the Clone Spell. B+ tier Clone Spell is very effective, especially in that Lava Clone deck that just never seems to die. It is perpetually a very good deck. Honestly, very fun to play as well. I really enjoy playing that one Lava Hound Clone strategy. The Dang Prince all the way up here at A+ tier. Overall, very effective card. Now, the Dark Oven going to be all the way over here at the lower end of A- tier. Now, I know the Dark Oven doesn't have the craziest of stats in terms of win rate, but it's actually a very powerful card, and therefore I'm ranking it A- tier. The Earthquake, dun B tier. Now, speaking of the Electro Dragon will be all the way up here at the lower end of the B+ tier, right behind the Bomber. Electro Giant, it's gonna be on the top end of the C tier. Just overall a fairly weak card. Here are the stats of the E-Giant right now. Only a 47% win rate and a 3% usage. I know what used to dominate the meta, but that's because of the +2 mirror and level 16 mirror cards. It wasn't necessarily the E-Giant itself that was overpowered. Yes, it's frustrating to face,
but if you actually use an E-Giant deck against a skilled opponent, it can feel almost impossible for it to break through almost any defense. It just dies too fast. So while it can be frustrating, I don't believe it is too powerful of a card anymore. Now, speaking of anymores, we have the Electro Spirit way up here at S tier. Very powerful card in terms of a cycle destroyer. Electro Wizard, A+ tier as well. Elite Barbarians, higher end of the A- tier. The Elixir Collector, honestly, is a fairly decent card as well. A- tier. Speaking of Elixir Collectors, this one right here, instead of collecting, gives it to your opponent. Elixir Golem was recently buffed in the balance update. Is it good anymore? No, not really. It is still a fairly weak card. Lots of players were using it initially when the balances first came out, and it appeared it might have a spot in the meta, but it is still way down here at the 91st ranked card in Clash Royale with a disappointing 45% win rate. So it appears E-Golem has still yet to find a place in the meta. Executioner, going to be over here at the higher end of B tier. The extra range does help out. It's just a fairly expensive card at 5 Elixir. The Fire Spirit up here, S tier as well. Honestly, a lot of the low Elixir cost cards are very powerful just because of the Elixir value that you can get with those cards if you are a skilled player. The things you can pull off become absolutely insane. Like, for example, if you use Skeletons and a Fire Spirit in the proper placement, you can get a +1 positive trade and completely destroy a Goblin Barrel in the process. That's just one example of the crazy value you can get with the fast cycle cards. The Fireball over here, strongest spell in the game, A+ tier. Speaking of fires, the Firecracker, unfortunately, one of the weakest cards in Clash Royale. And here's the thing. I know the Firecracker is annoying to face, but look at this, a disappointing 33% win rate. That is very, very low for a card in Clash Royale. I believe the Firecracker is a strong candidate to hopefully get reworked in a future balance update. Now, moving on, we have the Fisherman way up here at the A+ tier. Honestly, a ton of utility with the Fisherman. One of my favorite cards to play as well. It's just super fun yoinking things across the arena. Speaking of arenas, we have the Flying Machine all the way over here at A- tier. I believe the Flying Machine is an underappreciated card and can honestly be very frustrating to face if you don't have a Fireball or an immediately effective response. And speaking of responses, the card that can't be responded to at all, the Free Spell, all the way up here at the lower end of B+ B tier. And speaking of phrasing things, the complete opposite is actually the Furnace, spawning out the Spirits of Fire Destruction. Unfortunately, a very weak card, one of the weakest in the entire game. Yes, it's frustrating, but look at this. The win rate, only 30%, one of the lowest used cards in the entire game. Surprising? Maybe, but unfortunately just not very viable. Speaking of viable, the Giant way over here at the higher end of the B+ tier. Speaking of Giants, we have Giant Skeleton, lower end of the A- tier. Still very good in Clash Royale, as you can see with the strong ranking, just not as OP as it was before it got that previous nerf. Now, speaking of nerfs, we have the Giant Snowball. Not nerfed at all, just a segue, going all the way up here next to the arrows as a very strong spell in Clash Royale. Speaking of spells, Goblin Barrel, somehow a spell. Yeah, I know, that's crazy. Anyways, Goblin Barrel's gonna be way up here at the higher end of B+ tier. Goblin Cage, one of the better buildings in Clash Royale, but not that great overall. Right next to the Barbarian Hut and the Bomb Tower. Goblin Drill, way powerful card. A+ tier, very, very effective. Goblin Gang, this is a card that previously was a roommate with the Barbarian Hut all the way at the lowest D tier on my previous tier list ranking. However, with the recent addition of Tom the Spear Goblin, making it 6 goblins in total, it has skyrocketed all the way up to one of the strongest cards in Clash Royale. Very, very effective and obviously very popular. Honestly, the buff to Goblin Gang has made Log Bait extremely powerful this season, so maybe we'll see a change, maybe not, but Goblin Gang is back in the meta. Goblin Giant right next to the Giant B+ tier, maybe the lower end, no, B+ tier. And the other spawner over here, the Goblin Hut, unfortunately still a D tier card, way down here next to the Furnace in terms of ranking, only a 38 win percentage. Very, very disappointing. The Stabby Goblins, this is a card that was going to be changed, but then wasn't. Remember they were supposed to add 4 goblins, but then they didn't? Well, unfortunately, without a buff, it's still a very weak card. Golden Knight way up here in the champion tier, below the Archer Queen, but above the rest of the cards, because champions are overpowered. Golem, way up here at B+ tier. Graveyard, A+, very, very effective win condition, very, very versatile, and consistently one of the best performing decks in Clash Royale. Guards, A+ tier as well, maybe, you know, A- because the Goblin Gang is a bit boxing it out of the meta, so it has fallen a fair bit down to the lower end of A- tier, but overall still a fairly good card. Heal Spirit, let's go the boom. Hog Rider, boom. The Hunter, A-, the Ice Golem gonna be on the lower end of B tier. The Ice Spirit, same thing, lower end of B tier, maybe borderline C tier, but let's just throw it in B tier because B tier needs some love. The Ice Wizard, way up here at A- tier. Inferno Dragon, A+ tier, very, very effective card. Inferno Tower has skyrocketed in usage and win rate because of the nerfs to the cannon, right next here to the rest of the buildings at B+ tier. And then we have the Knight, which was also not buffed in its balance update. Honestly, pretty decent right now, just because I'm still gonna rank it B tier. It's still, like, by itself, not that strong, but because Goblin Gang is back, it propels Log Bait back in the meta, and a lot of those decks right now are using the Knight, so it does decent in Log Bait decks because Goblin Gang's overpowered, but the Knight itself is still just not that powerful of a card. Lava Hound, way up here, A+ tier, consistently one of the best performing win conditions in Clash Royale, and it never seems to get a nerf, which is interesting. Like, check this out. Currently, the number 2 highest rated card, 58% win rate, and it has been in that spot for a fairly long time in terms of one of the highest performing win conditions. No nerfs for the Lava Hound. So, overall, A+ tier. Lightning Spell, over here at the lower end of A- tier. Lumberjack, higher end of B+ tier. We're next to the Balloon. The Magic Archer, A+ tier. Very fun card to use and very powerful in the right hands of a skilled player. The Mega Knight, dun 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 dun. I'm gonna put up B+ tier. Speaking of B+ tier, we have the Mega Minion, higher end of A-, just very decent card for what it does, and a very reliable and consistent air defender. The Mighty Miner was nerfed, previously one of the best champions in the game before this balance update. It has now fallen all the way down to champion tiers. It's a champion. Champions are still powerful and still overpowered and better than the rest of the cards in Clash Royale. Even if it's the worst champion in Clash Royale, it is still a disgustingly powerful card. But it is the lower end of the champion tier. The Miner, way up here, higher end of A+ tier. Nerf Miner. I'm just kidding, please don't nerf Miner. Mini pack over here at the B+ tier next to the Lumberjack Minion Horde. B+ tier. Minions, B tier. Mirror, C tier. Unfortunately, that Mirror was nerfed and is now back to being a troll card. Mordor, still a very powerful win condition, obviously was just nerfed, but overall still very effective. As is evident with a current 55% win rate still on the Mordor after the nerf. Mother Witch, I love using this card, A+ tier. It is so much fun just turning the tides of momentum in your favor, getting a million picks to spawn out, and just crushing your opponent's hopes and dreams in one counter push. Honestly, very fun card and pretty powerful at that. Musketeer, higher end of the A- tier. The Night Witch, let's go lower end of the A- tier. P.E.K.K.A, right next to the Mega Knight. The Poison, boom. The Princey Boy's gonna be on the lower end of the A- tier. The Princess is gonna be way up here at the higher end of B tier. The Rage Spell, same thing, low end of B tier. Rammer is going to be way up here at the higher end of the B+ tier, in front of the Golem, but behind the Goblin Giant. Rascals, I believe, are honestly a fairly decent card. Call me crazy here, but I think the Rascals are underappreciated, and for that reason, I'm ranking them B+ tier. Rocket is disgusting, and it's going to go A- tier, just because Rocket Cycle is disgustingly broken, and honestly, nasty. Delivery here, I think, is an underappreciated card. Going to go in the lower end, middle end of the A- tier. Honestly, I think Royal Delivery is a fairly decent card. Royal Ghost. This is a card that I believe is flying under the radar and deserving of a nerf. Check out these stats over here. Royal Ghost, 55% win rate and a 12% usage. 7th highest rated card in the entire game, and it's been that way for a very long time. I believe that the Royal Ghost is flying under the radar and, in my opinion, deserves a bit of a nerf. Royal Giant is one of the best win conditions in Clash Royale right now. I'm going to go over here at the higher end of the A+ tier next to the Lava Hound as well. Piggy's over here did get nerfed, but still a very good card. A- tier right next to the, let's go right here. Recruits, higher end of the B+ tier. Skeleton Army, still very effective. Lower end of A- tier. Skeleton Barrel, gonna go on the middle of the B+ tier. Skeleton Dragons, higher end of B tier. Skeleton King, dun 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 dun, our last champion of the list. Where does it go? As you guess, on the champion tiers. All the champions are busted, they're all powerful, and it is the second highest champion in the game in my opinion. First being Archer Queen, second being Skeleton King, third being Golden Knight, and fourth being the Mighty Miner. Skeletons, another S tier card. As I mentioned previously, fast cycle cards are disgustingly powerful because of their versatility in the hands of a well-skilled player. There are so many different things you can do with these skeletons, enabling some very powerful fast cycle decks, but they are a bit of a higher skill card. Low risk, high reward, but to pull off those crazy plays, you do need a bit of a higher skill cap. Sparky over here at the B+ tier. Spear Goblins, higher end of A+ tier. Tesla, unfortunately, is a fairly weak card next to the cannon. And the Lock Spell, way up here at the A+ tier. Boom. 3 Musketeers gonna be on A-. Tombstone also up here. Very decent card in Clash Royale. Just synergizes pretty well with the Skeleton King. The NATO, another S tier card. Overall, fundamentally busted. Just, I don't even know what to say about this card. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's fundamentally broken. Valkyrie, higher end, lower end of the B+ tier. Wallbreakers, I think, is a pretty decent card. Higher end of A-. The Witch, unfortunately, way on the lower end of the C tier. Same thing with the Wizard. I know what you're saying. They are very popular on mid ladder, but look at these stats. Wizard, lowest rated card in the game, 22% win rate. Witch, 30%. That means the vast majority of players that are playing the Wizard and the Witch are losing their battles in competitive play because they just don't hold up. As you push up higher in trophies, the Wizard and the Witch just don't hold their ground anymore. They're decent at punishing low skill players, but they still just aren't that good overall. And our final 3 cards over here, the Expo deserves to be deleted. I should put a deleted tier over here. Just kidding. It's gonna be on the higher end of B tier. Zatspell, way up here at the bot, next to the behind the snowball. And then the Zappies. This card I think is honestly fairly good. Higher end of the A- tier, maybe even low end of A+ tier. But we're gonna put it in right here, A- tier. And that, my friends, guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, is my tier list. 107 cards ranked today. We have a few more tiers on this list versus previous lists. I felt like we had too many cards crowding each individual tier, so I added a few more to spread them out. But we have champions, overwhelmed, busted, and overpowered. Like, a lot of these cards are actually pretty good. Anything within the B to A- is like a decently balanced card. Anything A+, in my opinion, is way above average, and anything below B is way below average. So right here is the bread and butter of the cards in Clash Royale, and I would say we're at a pretty good placement right now in terms of card balance. But that's my list, guys and girls. What do you think? Do you agree or do you disagree? If you have a card on my list that you think should be changed, let me know down below. But this is the video. We shall see you all in the next one.